What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and to continue my series of Studio Ghibli reviews, I'm here to let you know that Ponyo is no perfect movie. And of course, Ponyo is about an enchanted goldfish played by Yuria Nara who attempts to leave her overprotective father, this wizard known as Fujimoto. And through the use of magic, she turns herself into a human and comes across a boy named Sōsuke played by Hiroki Doi. I couldn't find a translation on that. This boy Sōsuke had already met her as a goldfish and decides to name her Ponyo, and she's subsequently taken in by his mother, Lisa. Now, I try not to say over and over again with every Studio Ghibli review how great the animation is because the majority of you already know that. But with each new Studio Ghibli movie, there's always a new landscape or environment that hasn't been covered before. And with Ponyo, it really occurred to me that we hadn't really seen a movie purely about the ocean or about an underwater world before. So there was a lot of brand new beautiful scenery to see on the big screen. And of course, Hayao Miyazaki rises to the occasion. He was so meticulous about the depiction of oceans and waves in this movie to the point where he decided to animate all of that himself. And it led to a record of 170,000 separated animated cells. But you know what? The effort really goes to show. I love how the scenery, the character designs, and the colors all have that children's storybook feel to it because it's a very loose adaptation of The Little Mermaid. So you want to have that old school fairy tale look to it. And you know what? It really does suit the story and the characters very nicely. And it helps that Joe Hisashi's score, who's provided so much great music in these movies already, he does something a lot more tranquil with his music that I haven't really noticed since My Neighbor Totoro, because there are a lot of fast-paced, adventurous moments that have a lot of exciting, fast-paced orchestral music to it, especially when Ponyo is riding this school of fish trying to chase after Sōsuke when she turns into a human for the first time. It's incredibly fast-paced, it's animated in longer takes to make her stunts look a hell of a lot more exciting. But whenever characters are just riding on a boat on this underwater world where their village has been completely submerged, and they're very peaceful and optimistic about it because they're alive and they're on a boat and not really much else, the music is a lot more softer than you would get with most movies. Whenever you have something like Castle in the Sky or Mononoke or Howl's Moving Castle, there's always this soft piano melody that gives this sense of hope but also melancholy. With this one, there's really just a lot of slow but upbeat moments of hope and not really much else, because with a story like this, you can already anticipate what the outcomes are going to be. You're not going to be able to guess characters' actions and choices along the way, but you know that it's going to lead to these predictable beats. But it definitely helps that the animation, the music, and the characters are so good that you don't really care, because by far the best aspect about Ponyo is Ponyo as a character. And the animation and I'm going to keep saying this girl's name because I want to memorize this as much as possible. Yuria Nara. I just love how it's really easy to make a kid character in a movie or a TV show feel ungodly annoying, and the usual excuse is that it's trying to be more realistic in its presentation. And I'm not doubting that it's realistic, but because it reminds me so much of kids who are ungodly annoying that it really takes me out of the movie and I can't enjoy it. So there's a lot more pressure nowadays to make kid characters feel authentic but still enjoyable. But thankfully, Ponyo is such a cheerful, energetic, and curious child that whenever she's impressed by the most mundane things in daily life, her love of life and the joy that she feels learning something brand new is really hard to resist. Her passion for life is actually really contagious. Whenever one of my favorite scenes in particular, she's discovering what hot tea is for the first time. It's not by any means that interesting on the surface, but seeing a close-up from her perspective of dipping honey into the tea and then her close-up of the reaction because she's never actually had a drink before, and when she's mimicking Sosuke's reactions when he's basically scooping the honey from the spoon and blowing on the tea to make bubbles, it feels very authentic because kids tend to mimic the actions of their friends because they want to be exactly like them. And since Ponyo wants to be a human at all costs, it does fit the character very nicely. But she still has basic flaws that little kids go through without it really being dwelled on so much. she does nonchalantly talk about her life as a fish, not knowing that very few people really believe her, let alone understand what's going on. She can be snippy towards other people when they disagree with her or they try to enforce their rules upon her, especially her relationship with Fujimoto. And like many kids, she's known to make impulsive choices without really much thought of what happens afterwards, whether or not she causes any trouble or if her joy is going to last for very long. At least that's how I felt with. I felt that way with both the English and the Japanese version, and I started off watching the English version before I made this review, but I gotta be honest, the voice acting in the English one pissed me off so much that I switched to the Japanese version and started from scratch, which I felt disappointed by because you have a great supporting cast in the Disney version. You have Tina Fey, Matt Damon, Liam Neeson, Cate Blanchett, Betty White, Cloris Leachman, Lily Tomlin. Hell, as much as I'm complaining about it, Noah Cyrus as Ponyo is definitely the major highlight for sure. And none of the actors are technically really all that bad, but the translated script just sounds unbelievably corny. It has characters explaining things that do not need explanations because it's clear as day to any 5-year-old, or it's little facts about the mythology. Liam Neeson does this a lot, where he explains the rules of his magic, even though they never come into fruition ever again, that it's just so hard to take it seriously, and a lot of it feels like unnecessary filler. There are so many times where you don't see a character's mouth, but they're talking, and it's obviously added in dialogue because they don't trust kids enough to really understand what's going on in the script, and it really hurts the actors' performances because Tina Fey is giving one of her most grounded works as Lisa, the mother, but as many people have pointed out, she's one of, if not the dumbest parents in a Ghibli movie. Her driving is unbelievably reckless. She puts her kid in danger on so many different occasions. When he's caught skipping school and causing trouble at her work, which is next door to school, what happens when she takes him home? She gets him an ice cream. I get that you lost your fish and everything, a fish that you had for one day, but you still skipped school and caused a great amount of trouble. I wish I had that when I was a little kid. So her realistic attitude towards her performance, because she really is trying to be realistic and genuine, doesn't match up with the character's actions. And if anyone's going to complain to me about this because I complained about the Spirited Away parents, is Lisa dumber than them? Absolutely. Does she cause more destruction towards her child? Absolutely. That being said, she actually has scenes where she is capable of being a loving and smart parent, especially when she's put with having Ponyo as a responsibility. She starts to wisen up. She makes a lot more smarter choices. She's not 100% foolproof, but I just genuinely believe that she was a loving and affectionate parent in both versions, that I could sidestep the fact that she was a complete idiot. The parents in Spirited Away never saw any love and affection in them, so yet another thing to add to my plate when it came to that. Liam Neeson as Fujimoto, that was the one voice that really stuck out the most, because his stern, strict attitude didn't really match with his bright, colorful, and, for lack of a better word, flamboyant design. But at the same time, I can't really imagine that many other actors who really could convincingly play that character and be taken seriously. Plus, Liam Neeson in this is playing an overprotective father who would do anything to get his daughter back, including invading other people's privacy and business. Further proof that Liam Neeson should really stop playing parents in movies, or... yeah, just movies. That's really all I've got. But I will say this, the three actors that really fit the designs and personalities in the Disney version are Betty White, Cloris Leachman, and Lily Tomlin as these senior citizens that live at the nursing home Lisa works at, and whenever Sōsuke is around them and spends time with them, they feel so natural because they know how to talk to someone as if they were a genuine 5-year-old kid. Very loving, nurturing, understanding, especially when he's spouting out his fantasies, and they just love how curious and imaginative he is. At least Betty White and Cloris Leachman are, which, if you're Mary Tyler Moore fans, you're going to understand that Easter egg. Lily Tomlin starts off a little too mean-spirited as the one cranky senior citizen, but her minor arc does pay off in the end. So I've complained more about the Disney version just to get people to watch the Japanese version, because it is so much better in regards to its voice acting. That reminds me, I almost forgot about Frankie Jonas as Sōsuke, because there were times where he felt genuine and believable, and other times where it just didn't sound like he was even trying all that much. I know he was a young kid during production, but so was Hiroki Doi, and he was unbelievably more genuine, and he was less high-pitched than most kids in Ghibli movies, which is the great thing about Ponyo and Sōsuke in the Japanese version. Their voices fit the character design so nicely. They're not loud unless they really need to be, because a lot of what makes Ponyo interesting is just her silent reactions to daily life. She's not super loud about everything. In fact, she spends the most of the movie just looking at someone unbelievably confused because she doesn't know that much about the human world, and it makes her a much more open-minded child than you're used to. And that's another thing that makes her incredibly lovable as a character. Now, one thing I did notice while rewatching Ponyo today was that in the first half of the movie before her transformation, they do spend a great deal of time developing her and Sōsuke almost equally as characters in order to set up the things that they have in common so that you can buy into their friendship later on. But there were so many things about Sōsuke's daily life that there were, to the point where there were so many scenes that felt like unnecessary filler, namely centering around his workaholic father, who in the Disney version is played by Matt Damon. I get why he's in the movie, but every single time they cut back to him, it felt completely pointless. It didn't feel like there was any weight to the story. And if you were to remove him physically from the movie, have him be a character, but an unseen character, you could hammer in the importance of him returning home to his family in a much more subtle way. I sat there and I thought, wouldn't it be great if it was like E.T., where you didn't see the dad, and that made it very clear how much the son wanted him in his life, but probably didn't really need him all that much. But again, I get why he was in there, because Ponyo has a very overprotective father, and Sōsuke has a father who's incredibly absent, but at the same time, whereas Ponyo develops after dealing with her father being so overprotective of her, Sōsuke doesn't even seem remotely fazed by his father's absence, and he only gets like one scene to actually talk to him, and it's not really of that much importance. So there are filler moments like that felt completely unnecessary. I felt like you could have gotten to the transformation a lot sooner, or spent the entire movie about being after the transformation. Just have the entire movie be like My Neighbor Totoro, where all of her discoveries are portrayed in such a whimsical way to the point where you feel like you're a kid learning all these things for yourself all over again. Because after the repercussions of Ponyo turning human and causing all of this flooding and damage towards the city, even though they're completely unfazed by it, there are some potential stakes in there. I said this already. This is a loose adaptation of The Little Mermaid, and Miyazaki adds in some stakes that were in the original book. If you've read the original book, you know what would happen to Ariel if Eric didn't fall in love with her. And they add that in here, and I'm not even entirely sure why, because it's as clear as day what type of relationship Ponyo and Sōsuke have. And there's no real tension to it because they never seem to disagree with each other. Sure, Ponyo acts more like a child than he does, and there are moments where he has to smarten up and mature, especially when he's taking this boat that she transformed from a toy into a real thing, and he knows exactly how to work it, he knows how to steer it, and he's very quickly maturing like any other Ghibli kid, and that part was very nice. But at the same time, if there's the risk that he might fall uninterested with her, something bad's going to happen, but you never feel it because you know clear as day that they're going to stick together in the end no matter what. And there's even another subplot about the moon possibly getting closer towards the Earth and possibly crashing into it just because she turned human, and I don't even understand where that plot thread came from. It does feel like there are more filler moments in this movie than most other Ghibli films, and it doesn't really help that the English dub tends to over-explain it anyways, even though there's no point. It really makes you wonder why they would even release the movie in America if you didn't have faith in audiences paying attention. But the good news is, Ponyo does have beautiful animation, a fantastic main character, really good voice acting, and just an overall great sense of imagination and wonder from seeing an underwater world for the first time in a Studio Ghibli film. And of course, Joe Hisashi providing great music that elevates the atmosphere, the acting, and the themes. And for all those reasons, I'm going to give Ponyo a 3.5 out of 5. Guys, thanks as always for watching. If you have seen Ponyo, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. Be sure to stay tuned for more Studio Ghibli reviews, and be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.